Hello everybody, my name's Quartermaine and I have had the privilege to project manage a major transformation at my organisation, Independent Schools Queensland. I'm going to talk a lot about the technology. It's a major Microsoft stack implementation, but also the last point down here is to have a look at some of the change management, project management strategies, etc. I'm sure some people will be interested in. Okay, some of the context. We're an independent school organisation. Most states have got one. We look after private schools. We've got about 220 schools, or over 220, about 70 staff internal. The project had to deal with internal environment and external. Some of the unique challenges for us. SharePoint is SharePoint and 365 is what we picked in the end, and that works very well internally within your domain, but it presents many more challenges when you're trying to bring outside people, which are our members, into it. So that was a big part of this project, getting that all right, and we had a lot of help from consultants. Large membership, 8,000 currently in CRM, and our separate course system, 17,000. They will be SSO'd eventually. A lot of people to communicate, a lot of different multiple audiences, huge range of abilities and capability in schools to do this stuff, from having no IT staff to having teams of 5 and 6, etc. So that's very challenging. And we have 3 levels of users we've got to take care of: our staff, our members, and then people from all around the country and international in some of the community of practice areas. We looked at a number of options for how we would do this identity. And we looked at a federated approach, but it was decided, and we were advised, trying to get all our schools to come into a federated thing would just be way too difficult. So we abandoned that idea. We also looked at giving everybody an account within our tenant, but the management of that, the licensing, it's an extra login, all of that stuff, we decided to abandon that. Based on the fact that 70% of our schools is Microsoft 365, and what the 365 suite offers, and with all the Azure identity, we have gone with this solution. And that's to use a cloud identity of Azure Active Directory B2B. And with that is teamed a point of truth for our data, which is our dynamic CRM. Okay, what we started with was a system that had been written for us by a Melbourne company, had been in the organisation a number of years. It was hopelessly integrated in terms of a public website, a member portal, a CRM system, and some of the problems just became unsolvable over the time. We didn't own the IP, we were on a subscription base, so we decided to move. The old member portal was the only way that, just a website basically, the only way people, our officers, could get their information out to our members, and you had this tedious process of having to update your pages through the communications department and no real control. We also had the Connect and Learn system at that stage. That's still a separate system and working very well. We'll be having SSO on that eventually. The worst thing, I think, was there was no collaboration tools for any of our staff working with schools on projects. There was no real tools besides email and using dodgy, insecure sort of website services to try and do it. There was no formal way of doing it. So that was where we started. Externally, internally, we've had map drives, a big stack of map drives for all the files for over a decade, a whole lot of on-site applications, VPN, which was problematic with more people working from home. We had COVID, we have offices all over the state. We needed a web-based system that's easily accessible. We were dabbling with 365 already, Outlook was already up there, hybrid AD, and we were dabbling and learning a bit about Teams. We had a PABX-based phone system as well. Along came COVID, and it put change management forward about 6 months, I think, because everyone was forced to start using some of the Teams and 365 tools. A silver lining, if there is one. Okay, basic architecture. This diagram shows a basic migration from personal preparation type files, and the audience grows as you move out through the rings. And so you go from preparation and building to more percentage or performance stage. So OneDrive personal files, little internal teams for our staff. Okay, then the formalized resources go into SharePoint hubs, and we've got one in there for internal intranet, and then we have our member extranet, Okay, obviously security, all the security and identity stuff comes in when you move into that layer. And then finally, of course, we have the public website. And we did all of those things, had to be redone, the whole lot, including public website, because the old system had them all integrated, it all had to go. That same diagram again with some of the actual solutions pointed out. The two that required external identity in Azure Active Directory were our internal and external teams and our extranet, our member hub accesses. And with an intranet ISQ hub, we call it, we ended up building a public website using an Umbraco open source, and that's working very well. And of course, down at the personal file level, a tool called Sync was fantastic to help our staff sync up their private folders with some of the team folders. There's a bit of an idea of the implementation sequence that we had. Obviously, the point of truth Dynamics CRM had to come first. We had a marketing function built in that too for EDM communications. Then we built our to learn SharePoint and did it internally. We built our internal SharePoint hub. About the same time, we went to VoIP with Teams telephony. External teams were then started. The challenge we had, we really had to start these many months before we wanted to, because we had promised that these would be ready for our project teams at the start of the year. At that stage, our CRM data wasn't ready. So we had to do a whole lot of manual stuff with running scripts manually, building team sets or building contact sets as they went. So that was quite challenging. Also, the challenge was the member hub, the external member hub and the public website had to be released at the same time, because that's the old one we were turning off was built that way. So that was a very big challenge with a lot of staff involved in both projects and limited time. Then we did our internal teams and we migrated all our old map drive files, and the orange ones there we're currently working on, and that's just 3 of a number of upcoming. The red are ones we haven't started yet really. Okay, member hub design, the challenges. The old one had just over 400 pages of 6-7 levels of linkages. So we just had to simplify this, and that was the main design thing we looked at. We were hoping a lot of the content could go into Teams and not have to be on this hub, and that was true to an extent. We did a whole lot of analysis, Google Analytics analysis on the existing web page site, and looked at the existing CRM and access logs. And based on that, we looked at which areas really people were hitting. And we came up with 4 main areas of two focused menus, hero web part, and then all the operational areas. Then we thought, okay, we're going to build this thing. How do we do this? We really came with the staffing levels we had, we came to the conclusion we have to get our staff to do it. So we gave staff some basic SharePoint PD. Our consultants gave us the framework site. The IT team, we approved the design through steering committee. Our communications people built a style guide. The IT team built the empty pages based on the template and basically did all the main linkages. And then we set our staff to put their content in, which is basic content links and using document libraries. Had a few fun issues there. Thank God for the recycle bin. Then in the end, communications had to do quality assurance very quickly. It wasn't perfect, but it was very good. This is what this member hub looks like. There's the hero web parts, marketing areas. There's the 2 focus type menus. And then this is just a sample of the much bigger menu, which is all our operational areas. Just wanted to get people to the place they wanted really quickly. And that's gone over very well. Some areas of interest in those menus. In the focus content, we've got policies, template, procedures, and forms. They are not actually, you go in there and they're document libraries, but they're not actually document libraries that are in situ. They're basically SharePoint views, and it's using very clever stuff with metadata, and it's dragging files with certain metadata into these locations from all the other pages on the site. We did our own taxonomies, and we did 2 of them, basically 2 taxonomy, classification one and a publication type. Very clever and a lot of power, and we'll use a lot more of that in the future. The only thing probably worth mentioning in this little menu option is this is maintaining our member data, was an update Power Automate form, or Power App form, I should say, sorry. It basically takes existing fields from CRM and lets people update existing fields rather than having to re-enter everything from scratch. That little area there is where we list all our project teams that are running. Currently, we've got 9 community of practice teams, which involve people from all over the country, and 21 project teams, which are just our members and all the different things that we do for our schools. How did we and how are we doing team deployment? With our consultants, we got Power App forms built for people to request their teams. That data then gets put through into a SharePoint list. SharePoint lists are wonderful, have a lot of power with them, and this allows easy approval processes. This also is when eventually we'll archive our teams, the options go on there, and there's a separate hub for archiving where it'll put them, and that's based through that as well. The third process is pretty hands-on. We create the teams manually. That creates an empty group in Azure. The team roles connectors are put into CRM, so there's a role connecting contact for each team. We then run the scripts, which populate the 365 group, and then we tell the people, hey, you're in, go through the redemption process, which we'll talk about shortly. Just a quick idea here. There's our internal teams, all the internal teams running internally for staff. There's our external member project teams, and there's our community of practice teams. So a lot of activity going on. When we got to migrate all the files from map drives into the new teams, very interesting, 800 gig of files across 8 drives, countless folders. We actually got our managers with a bit of PD did a lot of the migration themselves, but for the bigger areas, larger file footprints, we got our IT manager to help them out with the SharePoint migration tool. Yes, we had a few issues with staff trying to work out new workflows using team file folders rather than the old Windows ones. To the rescue was the sync command, which allows you to sync up personal OneDrive folders with team folders. There's quite a bit of education that goes behind that with disk space and a lot of stuff, but been a bit of a lifesaver for that in the change management process. Recent stuff we've been doing, search in the hubs and SharePoint hubs is brilliant. We've been looking at file versioning, major and minor. That's part of our process, our ongoing process for changing the member page content. Our managers and officers basically only save as draft as a minor version. They let our comms know, and then comms do a Q&A, and then they hit the publish button so everyone can see it. And we're currently moving to dynamic email rather than using Outlook. Okay, member identity. SharePoint's geared, as we said, to not geared for guest domains. So the basis of all this is the CRM and our logic scripts that then take our CRM contacts and put them up into the right groups in Azure. Point of truth. We have 3 big logic apps running. One looks for new records, one looks for team role connectors and adds the teams, and the other one's a cleanup script. There's some of the challenges. Redemption has always been interesting. 70% of schools is fine because they're identified by Microsoft already in Azure. They go straight in. The other 30% have to get a personal ID or a one-time password. And we've had the support on that's been interesting. Hybrid schools are interesting. G Suite, who use both G Suite and Microsoft, we've ended up having to have 2 primary fields, one for identity, the Microsoft email, and one for the primary contact. So that solved that issue to an extent. Okay, the project management itself. There's all the components I'll talk about. There's our team, our internal team, and thank you to all of them. It's a great team, and I think we've done good things. Kyle, our systems admin and cloud. Sophie, coordination CRM. Joe doing a lot of work at the executive level with the change management especially. And the contract work from Anthony Patricio and my work at the bottom there. The consultants we used have been great. MOQ Digital did a lot of the original architecture work for us, and we used those plans all the way through. Some altered, but mainly that they did the initial plans, and they did the initial dynamic CRM implementation. We did decide to go for the final implementation to a company called Empire. It's now been bought out, by the way. And they did all the main scripting and the hubs and Azure work for us. And they did brilliant. And big caps off to Jesse and Andrew and at Empire. Project management tools. Okay, we obviously we used a team for the main project management part of it. We had private channels in the teams for where we put just the stuff we needed to see and not the consultants. And we made the consultants use our team and not the other way around, which was a good move because a lot of people don't like domain swapping, when you have to do if you're swapping between domain teams. So that worked well, and Empire worked very well with us in there, and so did MOQ Digital. Of course, we needed a project management tool for timelining and Ganting. In the time we had, and none of us were Microsoft project experts, so we went with a subscription service called Roadmark. I'll show you a slide in a minute. And it was brilliant for doing very, very quick timelines and easy and intuitive to use. We also archived all our emails through Teams. Every channel in a team has an email address. So every time we did an email of importance, we CC'd it to that channel. So we had a full archive of all our communications, and we used chat significantly through that. There's a look at the Gantt to the project management tool, Roadmark. We had all our different buckets of activity and color there. You can see the colors on there, all the different tasks. It's all click and drag and slide, time slider for zooming in and out, and then you've got all the different lanes of activity. So if you need a quick tool, you can learn how to use this in half an hour. Really good. We are actually going to project management, Microsoft project in the long run though. Also, trying to keep track of your risks, your issues, your decisions. You really need to protect yourself in these environments by doing this. So keeping the RAID up to date was hard work, but we did it. We had to meet so often, we had to meet every morning basically for many, many months. Most of the time it was online, even when we were in the office, sometimes it was just easier. Steering committee's role in this was not a decision making, but they would give input on everything we were doing all the way through. All key stuff had to be approved by the directors group. That sometimes slowed us up, but it was essential they were all on side. A lot of professional development clearly went on, formal, informal, virtual, face-to-face, and obviously we had many different stages of user acceptance, which helped everyone on board with change as well. So all that stuff, vitally important. Some of the challenges for change management internally, we had so much change, so much staff change fatigue, and you just sometimes can't give enough PD to alleviate all that. So staff were pretty good. They've done very well over the time. Also the paradigm shift of, okay, we had a very limited storage environment in the past. Now we've got all these different places and starting to get staff to think about what should go into OneDrive, what should go into an external team, what might be on the member hub, and what should be public. So a lot of thinking went into that. Also trying to get staff to clean up this existing stuff that's been there 10 years. Most staff very responsive. Resistance from some staff who I'm not sure why, because I hated the old system, but the old system was there, so that was always going to be there. And luckily the new system is much better, and I think most people can now see why we had to do it. Little thing there, the confusion between team and client, running a team and client and running it as a SharePoint site, that was very confusing. Obviously getting governance rules and style guides adhered to was big, and keeping pace with the documentation, and we're still behind the 8 ball in terms of documenting everything we've done. Our consultants did very good as-built documentation solutions, but writing up all the governance type rules and the procedural stuff is a huge job when you've had this much change to do. For the members, the change management also was challenging. We would send out memos to principals that just wouldn't get read or wouldn't get through. You know, generally principals do a brilliant job and they're very busy, but that was hard. We were giving very vital instructions and they weren't getting through. For instance, when we requested the bulk staff uploads for the CRM contacts in the beginning. We still have an ongoing problem with out of 7,000 who have been invited, only probably that's up to nearly 4,000 by now, have actually done their redemption process and linked up. Needing to get communications out quickly sometimes was slowed up by our internal communication processes, not much you can do about that. Support calls came in and they only give you half the situation, so we're getting much better at support over this time, believe me. And some of the school managers, IT managers, didn't prepare their staff well, and others did a brilliant job. So that is our story. So thank you very much for listening, and please contact me if you'd like to talk about any of those things.